For a great cup of joe, there's one thing you should know. Your morning brew can also be playful. Buff Boy Brewing guys make the temperature rise, and you surely feel naughty when you swallow our coffee. If you want some real heat, give your mouth a fine treat. You will want some more, rest assured. Buff Boy Brewing, you can't get enough of.
It's time for The Scribble, your weekly fix of celebrity chats, bizarre stories in the news, and basic random chatter with best-selling author and syndicated radio host Jeremy Bradley. Make sure your seat is in the upright and locked position and your barf bag is securely in place. Here's Jeremy Bradley.
Thank you very much, Larson. Jeremy Bradley here. This is The Scribble. Thank you so much for tuning in. I was going to say that it's election week in the United States, but it's really... I don't even... Oh, see, first of all, I'm a Canadian, right? And our elections are very different, and I'm actually going to explain, as a Canadian watching all of this stuff happening with U.S. politics, how we actually feel about it. Because you always hear, whenever there's a mass shooting, you have the cable news commentators coming on, or the politicians going and saying, you know, the world is laughing, the world is watching, the world is shaking their head. Well, that's widely known. But how do other countries feel about American politics? Because we simply just don't get it. And I'll tell you why, coming up on The Scribble right after this.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
JB here, coming off Super Tuesday and State of the Union and even just the stupid words, gerrymander, filibuster. I remember thinking that a couple years ago when I was writing my newspaper column, and you know, even though it was for a Canadian newspaper, that town in Canada is right on the border of Canada and the United States. So I had to chime in a lot of times depending on what was going on because it was a border town and... You know, so, and it's always kind of fun, especially when Trump was in office. I mean, it was delicious to just write commentaries about, you know, the stupidity of it all. But it was really then that I kind of started to pay attention to politics because it was sort of expected of me to chime in, you know, with things. And let me set the scene when it comes to a Canadian election. First of all, most people don't even really know when it is. Like right now, I know, and it's only, you know, March, what is it, 8th? Yeah, it's March 8th. I know when the American election is. And I don't even vote in it. Like, I'm not even, you know, because we hear so much about it on the news. We know when it is in November, but just because we do. But during the last Canadian federal election, I knew it was coming because, you know, like I heard about it. And the only reason that I really knew about it was because it was during the pandemic and our Prime Minister, Trudeau, our Prime Minister was just getting ripped to shreds by the critics because they're saying, wait a second, here you are, we're in a pandemic, we're telling people to stay away from each other, and now you're calling an election. See, again, different in Canada, he can call an election sort of any time. We have them every 4 years, but we can have one, you know, before then. It's not... you know, with the states, it's the law to have it right on a certain day. So I know when there was the election during the pandemic in the states, that it was kind of, you know, there was question about moving it to another day, or whatever. Well, it's the law that it had to happen that day. It can't be changed. Whereas in Canada, it's different. It can be, you know, generally it's in the fall as well. But so anyway, point is that he called the election, and I knew that it was going to be a Tuesday because that's just generally the day of the week that, you know, we have them. But I certainly, we have different areas in our neighborhood depending on if it's like a civic election, if it's provincial, if it's federal. It could be at one of the schools, right? Like it's not always, you know, it kind of moves around. So I don't even know until like that morning. I get the card in the mail, right? Like it says where to go and you present this card when you get there. Okay, fine. I don't even look at it. So, I mean, I'm kind of in that morning or whatever, whenever I'm going to go, it's like, okay, which school am I going to? Oh, okay. I'm not preparing. I don't know far in advance. Like, you know, I'm not planning my day around it. So for a Canadian election, we have a very, very not low key. I don't know any Canadians. I know a lot of people. I don't know any Canadians that are super into like the campaign. And we might only have a campaign for about a month or two. Like it really kind of ramps up in a month or two. And let's flip now to the US, where your presidential campaign is like 3 years. Right? I mean, it was all starting. It's almost like the last guy just gets elected and they're already now forecasting it. And the cable news programs or cable news channels even aren't helping. So I'm thinking, I was just watching, the State of the Union. It ran a little bit late on Thursday night. And then CNN, first of all, they have, I think it's almost 2 or 3 hours before the address, before the Biden State of the Union. And then was it 2 hours or 3 hours? It might have been 2 and then another 2 with a different group of people. So the actual address of him, standing up there and talking, oh shit, I knew how long it was. It was late starting, right? Because of the protests and things like that. And I wrote it down. I don't have it in front of me though. Maybe somebody, and I look across the room to my team. They're not even paying attention. I'm like talking to myself. Let's say it was an hour and a half. I don't think maybe it was. My point is that if your critiques and commentaries and criticism and debates and discussions about it run 4 hours, it's sort of my rule that I have with cooking. If it's going to take me 45 minutes to make something and only 5 minutes to eat it, I'm not doing it. It's got to balance out. There's got to be the ratio. It's going to take me 10 minutes to cook it and 10 minutes to eat it. I'm good with that. That's sort of the way I look at it, which is why we end up ordering out a lot of the times too. But I don't get it. So you're spending 4 hours dissecting an hour and a half of speech. And it wasn't even really because of all the standing up. They were doing fucking leg day there. And all those old people, I don't know how they're walking today, if they even are. So there's so many interruptions with the applause, like the standing ovations. It's just ridiculous. I don't get it. And that's something that's really weird, is that it's almost turned into like Super Bowl commentary, where you've got 7 people at the desk all chiming in. They're all... And it's really weird because it's so polarizing in that country. It's because it's so divided. And I mean, you look at the whole political thing, it's almost like they're just disagreeing for the sake of disagreeing. I can't agree with that guy because he's wrong, he's bad, blah, 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 bad. So I have to go against him because that's just how we roll and that's just how we do this. And so Canadian politics is similar like that as well, but it's not as... I don't know. I guess Canadians are kind of like, we know who the party leaders are and whatever. They do I've watched, it's called Question Period. They do it in the afternoons in Ottawa in the house. And I will tune in sometimes and it's the same thing. They're stomping and they're banging the desk and they're cheering and they're jeering each other. And then the next one stands up and he calls out, Mr. Prime Minister, blah, blah, blah. And then the Prime Minister stands up and he fires back at the opposition leader. And then he fires back at the Prime Minister. And then he fires back at the opposition. And you sit there, as a grown adult. First of all, you think, I'm paying for all this shit. Like, I'm paying for them to do this. And really, what is the purpose of this? Like, what are they accomplishing? They're just mudslinging each other every day, all day. And, like, what... They just insult each other. They undercut each other. They, and then they stomp and they bang their fists and they boo and they whatever. And you walk away from watching that on television going, what was the, okay, it's over now. Like that's the meeting. You all just go and scream at each other okay. What's the takeaway? What was accomplished? Nothing. But what I'm saying is Canadians are not that into politics. I don't know anybody who watches Question Period. I mean, news people, obviously. I mean, that's when I've watched it. But I certainly don't have any friends or family members that I know of that are tuning. Oh, Question Period's on. I'm gonna watch that. We just don't. It's not something that we're that invested in as Canadians. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's just a completely different, So going back to when I was saying about like on voting day or election day, I will see the signs, popping up in the neighborhood for the different candidates. And some of them, again, I'm in a different situation where I would be interviewing them for local news before. So I, would know them or I would talk to them. So I would have an idea. but the general, like, let's say my neighbors, I mean, I don't know, who they vote for, I've certainly never had a discussion about politics with them. Truthfully, this week I had a conversation with my radio colleague in Vancouver. We were talking. He's off on Wednesdays, and so we will generally have a phone call on Wednesdays just because he'll be out running around. I kind of want to catch up with him. So we talk on Wednesdays, and that's what we did this week again. And we were talking about Super Tuesday because that had just happened, and then we were talking about State of the Union, which was the next day. And he even just kind of laughs. He's like, I don't even, like, I know the names of them. I know Super Tuesday, but like, what does it actually mean? Like, what is the purpose of it? Then there's delegates and there's this and there's that, and you need this many seats and this. You need a math degree, and then the CNN has the John King wall. What is it called? The magic wall, where he's zooming in and zipping and touching and turning these colors, and if this happens in this, and if this happens and this number goes up and this one goes down, and then and he's talking a mile a minute, and you just want to say, breathe, buddy, breathe. The numbers are coming in. All right, let's go to this district. Okay, let's go here. Okay, and now if we go over to this state, and we breathe. I understand it though, right? He's got all these numbers coming. He's got so much to cover in so little time. I get it. Look, I've got to cram 30 minutes into, I've got an hour and a half of thoughts I've got to cram down to 23, 24 minutes on this show. But what I'm saying is, again, he's doing, it's almost like play by play, and he's zooming in and they're forecasting and predicting. And I just wonder, are people compelled to spend 4 hours listening to this analytical dissection of the State of the Union? I'm flipping back now to Thursday. So Super Tuesday was one thing. Now I'm back. And so as I'm having the conversation with my radio colleague, we were just sort of laughing, going, yeah, Canada, we just we go and we vote that day, and then that's kind of it. Like, there's no, and the States has Inauguration Day, so that ends up being a really big deal and very ceremonial and very, very patriotic. And I mean, when we have a new prime minister in Canada, it's kind of just like, so when is, I don't even know. Right? We know that it's January whatever, right? We know when the American inauguration is, but when it comes to our new, that was today? Oh, I didn't even, okay, yeah, sure, right? But we know when it's January 20th or whatever the hell, Inauguration Day is, like or whatever the day is. So I'm Canadian. I shouldn't even have to know these dates. But it's just such a weird parallel because we are neighbors, right? We're so close to each other, but we just don't have that same, like, politics isn't a sport for Canadians. I don't think, I've gone, for dinner. I've hung out with a lot of people. I go, I'm trying to think now when I've gone, who was the last person? Well, last person I went for dinner with was my cousin. Aside from my husband, would have been my cousin. And I'm trying to think, we talked about some family stuff. I don't think we've ever talked about politics. Now, again, we would, generally when Trump was in office, Canadians were talking about politics just because it was a sideshow, right? So, I mean, I'm saying we were talking about it sort of laughingly, but I've never, even in our family get-togethers, I'm 41, we've had, I've gone to family get-togethers all my life. Never has there been any talk about, Trudeau, Harper, like, it's just, you might have, like, if there's been a scandal or when Trudeau, split from his wife or something, like that sort of might just kind of come up in conversation, but never is like everybody sitting around the table, at Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever and having, screaming matches and like throwing mashed potatoes because they're a Trudeau supporter. But I don't know who any of my relatives vote for, truthfully. I don't know who anybody votes for. If they have, I don't even know if they have front lawn signs during a campaign. I don't know. We don't talk about that. And I would bet that if I were to text a bunch of, I don't have my phone in front of me, but if I would have, shit, I should have brought my phone in here. Somebody I would text people and go and say, have you discussed politics at Christmas? I would venture a guess that if not 100%, like 98% of the people that Canadians that I could randomly message right now would say that it's never come up. It's never happened. And we look at that in the States and go, you have these families that are like having fights and this person's not coming to Thanksgiving or they're not invited and they're not allowed in my house. And I'm like, wow, that's so weird. It's so weird. But again, when that's your whole, not vibe, but that's your whole sort of mentality as a country, is your your presidential election campaign is basically like 2 or 3 years long. It's just I don't get it. And the fact that these primetime shows on the cable networks, so I'm going back to CNN here, that's all the news is from that 8 o'clock. Well, see, in the Central Time Zone, the prime time is 7 to 10 o'clock. In the East Coast, it's 8 until 11. But you have basically the exact same stories over and over and over again. If I were to look at the Anderson Cooper show or I can't think of the other names of the people now. I only know Anderson, but let's just say that. So Anderson is on at whatever time. He's got an hour. Most of the same discussions about Biden, Trump, or whoever are going to be on the exact same, not the exact, but the show, there's going to be the exact same stories the next hour, whoever's hosting that hour. Whereas before, CNN was 24 hours of news. You might have... they'd tap into, in St. Louis, there's a plane making an emergency landing. They tap into that feed and we're watching that live. Or there might be a police chase in Los Angeles. They'll tap into the local station. We'll be seeing that. It's all political. That's what news is. And it's so dominating. And again, you give the people what they want. That's why people are tuning in. Well, obviously they're not, because CNN's ratings are down big time. But that's what I loved about CNN when I was a teenager, wanting to be I was an aspiring journalist, and I would be watching all the time because I was fascinated by that news. We had Chris Cuomo on. Oh, you know what? I don't think that we ever did air it. We taped an interview with Chris Cuomo about a year or so ago, and we were talking about the state of news. That was the whole idea. Was, okay, Chris, let's talk about where the news is. How it's controversial because people don't trust it, and it's maybe not as credible anymore because there's so many different news sites and people get their information from other places. I kept trying to steer. It kept coming back to politics with him. Every time I would say just about the news in general, he would take it to politics. It was almost just like he was already trained that, oh, Jeremy is saying the word news. I hear news as being politics. No matter how I tried to steer him, no matter how, I tried to get us back on track to just news in general, not political news. He just couldn't separate it. News equals politics. Politics equals news. And I thought, wow, that was really weird. The reason why we never aired it, I should just also explain. He was on his boat fishing, and the wind was really, really, it was fucking annoying. That's the only way I can say it. So there were so many times where it just got really, the wind in the phone. And when we actually kind of went and did the listen back, it was like, it's just too hard. We can't use it because he might be giving a good answer, and then halfway through the wind picks up and then you lose it. So there was really no way to kind of even cut it to take that out or to fix it. So that was the reason why we never aired the Chris Cuomo chat. But my point is that, it's like news and politics is the same thing. And again, Canadians are just not that way. So when you go back, now let's go back to Tuesday. So the Super Tuesday thing, I knew that it was coming because I'm an entertainment reporter on the radio. There's a good chance that if there's a big celebrity reaction to things, like let's say the State of the Union as well, I'm going to have that on the radar going, okay, if something big happens, I need to jump on Twitter and see what the celebrities are saying because we're talking about it tomorrow morning on the radio. And so there's been this bleed over from politics into entertainment, not only because you have celebrities getting into politics, but because celebrities are chiming in on politics because that's the landscape now when it comes to news. So it's very weird when you come from a country that's not political, or really Canada, it really isn't, to then just, it's so polarizing in the United States. And it's kind of jarring. But at the same time, we kind of sit here going, if you're so fed up with it, like, it just seems like that's the fabric of the country for Americans is it's a 2-year campaign. It's fighting. It's like, when I was, okay, we're going to take a break. Thank you. They are signaling me. I'm going to talk about, I mentioned briefly about how I would interview them and I would talk to them. I'm going to tell you about that coming up in the next segment because it's not so much why I lost respect for politics, but I think we all have this. There's a term like you give a politician's answer, which means a non-answer, right? Like you're not answering a question. I'm going to tell you about my first-hand experience with that coming up on the Scribble right after this.
Ever had something to get off your chest but never had the balls to say it? That's a load of crap. Speak Free with JB.com is exactly what you've been waiting for. Your chance to tell it like it is and not care what anybody else thinks. Have your say on issues of the day. Join newspaper and radio columnist Jeremy Bradley as he tells it like it is. Hundreds of thousands of people have stopped by, including some well-known celebrities who have had a chat with JB and speak candidly about what's really going on in the world. You can join them too. Have a rant or a rave. Be brave and head on over to www.speakfreewithjb.com now.
It's never too early to start thinking about your next holiday. Have you checked out Mexico recently? From tequila tasting, swimming with horses, to ziplining through the jungle and watching whales and dolphins in their natural habitat, Puerto Vallarta has it all. Visit mexico.jbonair.com to see all the fun PV has to offer. That's at mexico.jbonair.com for hundreds of photos, interviews, and videos from around the tourist hotspot. Check out mexico.jbonair.com for all the fun. That's mexico.jbonair.com.
JB here on the Scribble. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Now, talking politics as a Canadian and observing American politics, I did have to dabble in elections not too long ago. Now, when I was in college as a journalism student, I would work at our daily newspaper, the Winnipeg Free Press, on election nights. And I did that for several years, actually. And I didn't really have to do much. They gave us students different lists of the candidates and then their campaign manager, their cell phone, whatever. And then if they won or if they lost, we would call and get a quote from them. That was all I was working the phones, basically. And so years later, fast forward years later, when we had, I can't remember if it was, I don't know if it was a provincial election or if it was, it was a civic election because I was interviewing candidates who were running to be mayor. And I don't remember why I did it or how it all came about, but I wanted to talk to all of them. I was going to give them 5 minutes each. I said, let's do a 5-minute call. I think we did it as a podcast too, maybe. And 5 minutes, you're not allowed to mudsling. You are not allowed to say any of the other candidates' names because I'm asking you questions about yourself. So don't go into the current mayor and how he's a jerk and he hasn't done anything. And nope, I'm gonna cut you off and say stop. And I compare it to on The Bachelor when you have, that few minutes with the guy or girl, if it's bachelorette. You have that few minutes with them and you spend your time bitching about the other people or gossiping about the other people, saying this one's a bully. She's mean to me. I don't like her. Do you know what she was saying? She's making us so uncomfortable. Why aren't you using your time to put yourself in the spotlight? Everybody complains on that show that they don't have enough time with the guy or he didn't get a chance to know me and blah, blah, blah. But then look what you just did. You got your minute. Can I interrupt? Can I steal him for a second? And then you're going to go and bitch about, Dorothy or Renee or Phyllis or whoever the other bitch is on the show. And so when I was interviewing these mayoral candidates or these hopefuls, I was very clear and say there's no mudslinging. I'm going to cut you off and we have 5 minutes. So this is your 5 minutes to convince me. First of all, tell me who you are, convince me to vote for you. And really that's all you can cover in 5 minutes. Not one of the segments or calls ran 5 minutes. Everybody just talked and talked and talked. And so I kind of thought, whatever. But at the same time, in doing that and letting them ramble, I was basically letting other people, like if I asked somebody, I do remember it now because there was one guy who he was a bus driver before and he was running to be mayor. And so I asked him about the problems with the transit system. And so he was very clear to identify that it's a problem. Okay, great. That's wonderful. You've identified it's a problem. But how are you going to fix it? And so he dodged it entirely. Like he's just going on and on and on. And I said, you haven't told me though how you're going to fix it. You haven't told me how you're going, because it's a city service, so it's not intended to make money, right? It's supposed to just sort of sustain itself because it's a service. And so, there's a deficit and they're over budget and they don't have money for it. Well, then how are you going to allocate that money to the transit system? Like, what are you going to do? How are you going, like, you've said that it's underfunded. Great. Where is the money going to come from? Like, where are you pulling it from? There's only so much money that you have, just as anybody does. You only got this much money to work with. So it's got to come from somewhere, or you've got to raise more somehow. So what are you going to do? Are you taking it from the parks department? Are you going to raise taxes and charge? Like, you've got to give me an example. You can't just go and say you're going to fund the transit system, because that's not, that's a partial answer. And so it was fascinating to do that, because you could ask them a question, even if it's a yes or no question, you get a 5-minute response, literally 5-minute response. And then, because I'm a trained journalist, I know that I have not heard the answer. So I'm going to ask you again, point blank, give me whatever, such and such, blah, blah, blah. This is the state. Okay, go. And you're not going to answer me again. And so I will then draw that conclusion and say, all right, you did not answer the question. Let's move on. Because I'm going to summarize that for the audience. That's not me editorializing. That's me informing the audience and going, okay, here's what you just heard in that 5 minutes. He didn't answer the question. Now. And yeah, now there were 2 times, I believe, where somebody did go and, invoke the mayor's name or whatever. And I said, no, we're not doing that. You knew coming into this, you're not allowed to do that. You knew you're not allowed to do that. We're going to move on. Because that also says to me, this is a grown-up who I've said, like, I don't want you trash talking. I don't want to hear that. But if that's your default setting, is to now all of a sudden just, I didn't even ask anything about the mayor. I didn't even bring up his name. So how are you? I ask you about transit, and you're going and saying that this mayor has cut. Well, that's no. You're not allowed to do that. You can't. I'm asking you how you're going to fix it. I don't need the backstory of how the previous guy screwed it up, or the current guy screwed it up. This is on you. How are you going to fix it? So now, would I do that again? Probably not. And that wasn't frustrating, because it's not like I was, it's not like I was just chatting with them, right? It's not like, now if I was actually doing it for a national, program or something, sure, I'd probably be like, that was really crummy, like these people. But instead, I kind of thought, the whole point of this is, I'm giving you the platform. There's no debate. Nobody's interrupting you. But you're not allowed to mudsling. You've got to stay on track. This is what we're doing here. You're giving me your answers. I'm like interviewing you for the job, essentially. And you're not allowed to talk about anything else. It's just you and me. Everything that I'm asking is about you. What are you going to do? How are you going to fix it? Because it's something that you inherit when you get into that job. That's, you're handed, it's no different than when you start a new job and you're all of a sudden the new accountant, or you're the new whatever, in your office. You pick up where the other person left off. If they left your department or your whatever, a mess, well, you fix it. That's, so send me an email. Tell me, if you are Canadian listening to this, I want to know your thoughts on American politics. And if you're an American, I want to know, do you like that political setup where your presidential campaign runs for like 2 years? It's kind of exhausting, isn't it? I would think so. The email address is live@jbonair.com. Live, L-I-V-E, @jbonair.com.
Who are the Kardashians feuding with now? What did that little thug Justin Bieber do this time? Who's getting hitched? And who's headed for Splitsville? Hear the latest celebrity news and gossip every day on Entertainment Wrap-Up. The good, the bad, the ugly, but mostly the ridiculously hilarious. It's all recapped in this daily segment at entertainmentwrapup.com. Have a laugh at the expense of the rich and famous when they take themselves way too seriously. It's 3 minutes of time-wasting fun at entertainmentwrapup.com. Check out Entertainment Wrap-Up at entertainmentwrapup.com. Brought to you by Speak Free Books.
We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up the Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter at The Scribble Show and at thescribbleshow.com.
JB here on The Scribble. We were talking about it's election year in the United States, and it's also awards show season, and so I was just reminded that, we're covering the Oscars again this weekend, and so Americans just have this thing, like, just milking stuff for all that it's worth. You spend 3 months of the years celebrating millionaires patting each other on the back, and then it's just, the election thing. I don't get it. It's very weird to me. And somehow I'm roped into all of it as an entertainment reporter. All right, feel free to give me a shout anytime. It's always awesome hearing from you. Again, the email address is live, L-I-V-E, at jbonair.com. Live at jbonair.com. I don't even know what we're talking about next week. I'm exhausted. What is it? It's March 8th, and the election is in November. I mean, yikes. 2 days of it. Super Tuesday and State of the Union. I don't know. Americans, I don't know how you do it. And it's even going to be wilder if Trump gets in, but that's another story. All right, I will talk to you next time, everybody. Bye-bye for now.
Want more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter at The Scribble Show. The Scribble is a speak-free media presentation.
If you want some real heat,